Today, any intelligence service, not just the US, can blame anyone for a cyber attack. We know this from Vault 7, one of the most recent WikiLeaks dumps. It showed that the CIA had hacking tools that let them put the fingerprints of enemy states or any other group they wanted into hacks that were actually done by the CIA. Basically, it's a tool for making online false flags for any reason. The person in charge of the CIA now was in charge of the Carnegie Endowment when they ran or wrote these papers with the world's largest private and central banks about a cyber attack on the financial system and how that would push banks, the CIA, and intelligence agencies to share more data. The future isn't just coming up, it's already here. Though it's not as dark or scary as you might think. There is a quiet change going on in the world's banking system. Stablecoins, tokenized deposits, and public-private agreements are some of the first to do this. But there is still one important thing missing, a spark that will set it all in motion. Whitney Webb, an investigative reporter, raises concerns about central bank digital currencies (CBDCs) in a talk with James Patrick that makes you think. If these digital currencies are used, they could end the privacy of our money as we know it. When CBDCs are linked to digital IDs, governments and businesses would be able to see all of your transactions and follow you around, all in the name of fighting terrorism and money laundering. This could lead to a new era of surveillance in which people's financial actions are always being watched. The change won't hurt the power of regular banks either. It will make them stronger. Big banks like JP Morgan and Citigroup are already getting ready for this change. They are using stablecoins and tokenized accounts to make sure they can keep their power in this new world. If you want to gain power while putting people's rights at risk, the future of finance is closer than you think. Stay tuned until the very end of the movie, where Whitney Webb shares her scary predictions for the years after 2025. Also, not many of the people who watch my videos actually subscribe. If you like videos about money, you might want to subscribe or like this one. You can back out at any time for free. It's now time for Whitney Webb to warn about what has already started. Clearly, the only way to get people to join a CBDC is through some kind of crisis or event where they will be basically given an offer they can't reject. No matter what the crisis is, it makes it so that people will have no choice but to use this new digital currency scheme. Even if it shows up in different ways, the story will always be the same: privacy is dangerous, secrecy is dangerous, and financial privacy is especially dangerous. The stories that come out of this event will be like that, and that will be a way to force people to use digital cash that can be tracked to stop things like funding for terrorism. We also need digital ID because we need to know who is online and using these tools. There are a few reasons I think they'd want private banks to play a big part in the new digital currency system. First, it's easier for a private sector organization to bank you and handle your money than for the federal government. For example, if the Federal Reserve did a direct issue CBDC, it would be harder for them to close someone's bank account or debank them in any meaningful way than if it were a private company. For example, JP Morgan Chase was one of the first banks to debank Dr. Warkola and some of his leaders without giving a reason. They just told me that they can't help me with my finances anymore. There were no questions. If the CBDC was given directly, that would be very hard to do. This is like the case that has been made for social media companies to control. They say that it's because they are private businesses. In any way they choose, they can limit speech. But we now know that their limits on private speech were caused by pressure from the public sector, right? Again, people need to remember that this is a partnership between the government and the business sector. That's the type that most people in the US use. The US digital dollar will also be a mix of public and private money. In the United States, the Fed, the central bank, will work with the private banks that own the Fed, in which they will work together to make the system work. It's not going to be all public or all private, it's a relationship. While the Fed could release CBDC DDC directly, it would take them a few years to plan, test, and use it. If you choose to use these existing dollar peg stable coins, they're already here, they're already on blockchains, and a lot of the steps that would take the Fed a few years have already been taken. You can have a similar system without having to create a direct issued CBDC if you regulate them so that they have to do things like keep their reserves at the Fed. A company called R3 is one of the biggest producers of CBDC right now. It has the support of some of the world's biggest Wall Street banks. Central Banking Magazine named the CBDC Partner of the Year last year. After that, they make a bunch of CBDs for different countries around the world. That's not all they do though. They have something they call a digital currency accelerator. The three types of digital currencies that have been created so far are fixed coins, cryptocurrency based deposits, and cryptocurrency based deposits. Also, some US banks have already started using deposit coins. JP Morgan and Citigroup. Last year, JP Morgan put out a study paper saying that deposit tokens are better than CBDCs. So Oliver Gale, who calls himself the father of CBDCs, co-founded a business called Fluent Finance not long ago. They are trying to make a reliable dollar-pegged stablecoin which they call as Plus. This is what Fluent Finance does. It is also meant to be an answer to dollar-pegged stablecoins like Tether, which have caused a lot of trouble because their funds are not always clear. That's why US Plus is important. It lets you keep track of your savings in real time. In other words, it's an effort to make a very reliable US dollar pick safe coin that is backed by a group of banks. The person who came up with CBDCs is likely moving on to stablecoins because he thinks there's something there. So if you look at it all through the lens of managing risk, from the point of view of the leaders, let's look at what BlackRock's Larry Fink, who has spent his whole career obsessing over risk management, said. He says in a quote or on video that the markets don't like democracy because it's messy. Instead, they like totalitarian governments because there is less danger. Elon Musk is one of these people who is trying to present himself as a supporter of free speech. While that sounds like something from the political right, a lot of the policies Elon Musk supports, like carbon taxes, have actually been pushed by groups like the World Economic Forum and others that are seen as more globalist than populist. People forget that Elon Musk's businesses have relied heavily on government grants. Right now, many of his companies depend on getting a lot of people to buy electric cars through policies related to the Sustainable Development Goals to get rid of fossil fuel cars, or they work as contractors for the Pentagon and intelligence agencies like SpaceX. There seems to be pretty broad agreement that another very big financial crisis is on the way in the next few years. For the big banks, that's probably something they'd rather not happen. After all, they don't want a situation like 2008 when people knew they were to blame for the wrongdoing and the economic problems that led to groups like Occupy Wall Street. If you want to avoid that, what is the best way to get out of being responsible for losing or mismanaging other people's money? As long as you can say that hackers took it, then the hackers are completely to blame and not you. And these days, any intelligence service, not just the US, can blame anyone for a cyber attack. We know this because of Word 7, one of the most recent leaks from WikiLeaks. It showed that the CIA had hacking tools that let them put the fingerprints of enemy states or any other group they wanted into hacks that were actually done by the CIA. Basically, it's a tool for making online false flags for any reason. That person is now in charge of the CIA. They were in charge of the Carnegie Endowment when they ran or wrote these papers with the world's largest private and central banks about a cyber attack on the financial system and how that would push banks, the CIA, and intelligence agencies to share more data.